The first thing I'd like to do for our audience here and also the audience on YouTube is to introduce yourselves and your responsibility on this project. And start with you, Kang.
Hi everyone, I'm Kong. I was the director of Emergence.
I am Moonark, you can call me Moon. I did some of the writing as well as the captioning for the film.
I'm Invisible Waffles. I did the avatars for the film.
I'm Lazy the Dino King. I do the body acting for the characters, and I occasionally help with the writing.
Hey everyone, my name is Quinster, and I directed the cinematography and helped out with camera work.
Gorgeous! Thank you so much, and I love all the cheers that are coming from the audience. It's so lovely. My first question is for you, Kang. I know you've been making films in VR chat for a good amount of time now, and so I think it would be wonderful to just hear a bit of background on how you've got into VR filmmaking and what led you to this short.
Sure. Yeah, so as a kid and growing up, I've always really wanted to do film, but I found it very inaccessible to do film to the extent that I kind of wanted. I mean, getting like cameras and equipment outside of VR is expensive, and I, for a while, just wish there was an easier way. You know, I've always been interested in animation. That was something that I really, really, really liked, and basically what led me to VR chat. When I started playing VR chat, it was for just for the game purposes. But quickly, as I was in VR, I realized that there were people that were doing films in VR. And it was intriguing to me because these avatars kind of mimic characters that you would find in a game or a story or even 3D animation, 3D anime. And that was where I realized that we could do something with this. There were inspirational films to me that really got me to, I guess, continue that path. And I want to give a shout out to actually Acme Jack for Derailed, because his film was, I believe, the first one that I saw. And that was really cool. And I realized, let's do something. And so I wrote up a couple of films early on. And obviously, when you start out doing filmmaking, it can be very rough and hard and difficult. And so after doing it for a few more films, we got to the Penrose Protocol and Voicemail, which were my two previous films. I think they were mentioned in the beginning of this one. And those films were what led me to really dive into this universe that we created here with the studio. And Emergence was meant to be the way to kick it off. I really wanted to have a character that we could see the perspective from who doesn't know about the city of New Millennia, that we could follow, I guess, their viewpoint as they entered the city of New Millennia. And Lucina Mai was the character that we decided to go with that allowed us to allow the audience to enter the city with us for the first time.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for kind of highlighting your journey with us. I think it's fascinating to hear how other people come into the space and kind of find their voice, especially in filmmaking. And I really want to talk about the bigger narrative of Penrose, because I know there's a lot there, and then we're kind of, this film scratches the surface, so maybe we can tease some other things later. But I want to move to your collaborators. I'm curious if you've worked with Kong before, and what was particularly appealing about this project? Were there certain inspirations you had when Kong perhaps pitched this to you?
So I guess I'll go first. So I have previously collaborated with Kong on the aforementioned Penrose Protocol. I am personally just a fan of the idea of this world we have, New Millennia, this living, breathing city of different people, different viewpoints, from the small average Joe, no pun intended, on the street to these huge corporations and giant entities with a lot of influence. I thought that was really neat. And I also think Kong just has a very vibrant mind, and I'd like to see a lot of the ideas we come up with come to life.
I guess I'm next. Yeah, I also helped with the aforementioned project as well, Voicemail Penrose Protocol. I really want to help make these narrative films and help progress like the medium forward to hopefully see more in, well, the virtual world.
So, just like them, I worked on a Penrose Protocol and voicemail, and what I really love is just the style of genre he goes for, which really speaks to me. And just he goes into like points that aren't really like looked at a lot of times, especially in like VR filmmaking. And that's what always drove me to be able to help him more and to be able to create this, to be able to see where we can bring this and, bring it to life.
Like everyone else, I assisted with helping Con create Penrose Protocol and voicemail through camera work. And when you told me the idea and plot for Emergence, I was immediately hooked because it was such a detailed story with just a massive amount of area for creativity. I was like, I want to help you visualize this and make it into something that everyone would really enjoy and just be hooked onto.
Nice. I think it's wonderful that you've created this team, Kong, and you've collaborated together. It's very clear to me that you've put, it seems, all of your skills together, and I'm sure you can go further in the next projects you're going to make, but you've put your skills together and it really shines through in this film. I want to talk about camera and style. I think this film, it's clear to me that there is a really rich attention to creating a really cinematic quality in the widescreen format, kind of slow camera moves, and the string music as well. It all feels so kind of classical. And I'm curious if there was any influences when approaching this kind of noir thriller genre. Were there other films that came to mind when you were thinking about camera or music as well? How did you approach the sort of artistic direction of the film?
Yeah, so there's a lot of layers to that question, or rather, I'm losing track. Okay, into why we kind of decided to go with this cinematic feel. So I guess it kind of started with the Penrose Protocol. If you want to be technical, it kind of started with voicemail. All the three films that I've mentioned, they have kind of a similar color grading to them. And so I guess starting off with the Penrose Protocol, my previous film, just to give a little bit of context about that one, it's about a hitman and their, target, and them kind of going at it and fighting until the very end of the film, which I probably shouldn't spoil. But we really like the idea of series storytelling in this medium. I mentioned earlier that animation was something that I really, really enjoyed. And that's kind of my goal with these films, is to mimic what you can do in an animation, but through VR chat. We know it's very difficult to completely mimic animation, and so that might be a better save for later question. But with the film itself, we went with this gritty sort of style. Because we were inspired by a couple different films, or rather anime and shows. Arcane is a show that we really liked, and we've watched together as well. And I also like the anime Psycho-Pass. If you've seen any of those two shows, you'll see that there's actually a pretty similar color grading style to them. And we want to show this stuff cinematically, and that widescreen format really kind of shows that off. It makes you feel like you're almost in like a movie theater, right? And I also wanted to mention a little bit more about the color grading, because it helps with what we were going for. So with the stories that we're telling at the studio, I really like emphasizing the stories that are told of someone who is postgraduate from a university and not, 30 to 40 years old where you've settled down. And I guess the Emergence kind of touches on that a little bit. But if you notice the color grading that we chose, I decided to make all interior as well as like home interior inside the train a little bit. With the Penrose Protocol, we did the same thing indoors to feel more warm and orange and comfortable. And we portray everything else outside as very cold and distant and kind of scary. And that's a bit of just a hint at what we're trying to tell, is that idea of the outside is scary. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that comes through. I think when we enter the city, it really feels like a dystopia to me. It feels it's kind of a dystopia in the future too, with all the lights and this kind of neo Tokyo, and what feels like poverty on the streets. So I think you've captured that really well. There's other images that are coming to mind, but I'm going to save everyone from just fanboying over certain images that are burnt in my mind. I was wondering, Quinster, if you wanted to add anything just in terms of your direction with camera, when it came to the cinematic quality, or trying to get specific movements. Did you have to do many takes of your movements?
So definitely when it came to Emergence, we wanted to structure everything out first with, saying, hey, we want to do maybe a close-up shot with, Lucina Mai in the very middle. And when it came to taking multiple shots, yes, we had to do it multiple times because we ran into either, latency issues, clipping with, maybe Lucina hitting like maybe the staircase or a wall or something, or maybe they lost tracking. But, we took a lot of extent into making sure we got the perfect shot and just redoing it to, the best perfection we could get. And when it came to different environments, for example, the city, like how Kong get inspiration from like Arcane, I took inspiration from actually Blade Runner, the 2049, and wanted to kind of incorporate that into our shot. And hopefully they worked a little bit, but with filming, it's a little difficult because there are some limitations with, getting some crazy shots or doing absolute, some really cool effects with, camera motion as well as how fast your camera is. And when we had the running shot over the trees, that was actually a pretty challenging shot, but it actually worked out really nicely. And just getting that kind of focus on Lucina running and running constantly, and then, finally falling over onto the street, realizing that she's scared, she's afraid. It was just able to capture that, and it was just absolutely incredible. So I had a lot of fun just being creative with using different types of shots and techniques to visualize Kong's film or idea for Emergence.
Yeah, that scene in particular is always one that I always go back and watch. The running scene, that kind of climactic moment, and the POV shot running through the woods, and the following cut of the moon going behind the trees just always gets me. For some reason, that cut just works so well. It's so smooth, and so well paced in the edit. I want to turn the conversation a bit to production design. I really loved your attention to creating avatars and creating specific props for this film. I think of the parents, I think suit Lucina's character so well, and it's also quite fun for me because I know that you wear this avatar so often, Kung, so I was kind of seeing your parents too in a funny way. And the emblem of Penrose too on the gun was also really well placed. I know it's an important part of the story. So I'm curious if you can share any wisdom on the production design. How did you approach creating those props and avatars? Was that something you could share on Invio perhaps as well?
It's something we actually worked on together. I sometimes see what Kong wants for his vision for this world, what he thinks with the characters, what would portray them best. And yeah, it's just a bunch of collective thoughts put together and pushed out in this visual form.
Yeah. So I guess the design of the actual props and the characters themselves all deal with the writing, because obviously there had to be that logo on the gun, otherwise it wouldn't have made sense that there was a connection between Penrose and that intruder. And so, like Waffles mentioned, we all are in calls when we're writing this stuff, and as we're actively writing things, we'll make notes of what we need for the avatars. And I guess this is kind of funny. I'm glad you brought up the parents, because the mom is actually this avatar base, but not the same, if you will. And the dad is just a completely different base with ears added. It's kind of funny looking, but that's beside the point. But yeah.
It's effective. It's really effective. It kind of brought me a smile when I saw it, but obviously it also serves the story beautifully. I want to talk about performances. I'm really curious how you approached capturing the performances. I think the body movement, not only the body movement, but the vocal performances, the voice acting is stunning in this film. It's so captivating and it's so clean and polished. How did you approach capturing the performances for this film? Were you body acting and speaking the lines and then dubbing in post, or were some of the voice actors present on set?
Sure. I can start off with the voice acting stuff, but then I'll actually throw all of the body stuff to Lazy, who is our lead body actor. And also Ghostly, who's in the crowd over there. He was also one of our lead body actors. But starting off with the voice acting, we always do dubbing in post. We don't usually have the VAs present at the film, sessions because it'd be a little confusing. But what we do is I try to get everything put together footage-wise, and then I'm usually in the call with the VAs helping them dub over the lines. And so that is all done in post. And I also need to give a shout out to Vib Ripple, who is also in the crowd right there, who is the voice of Lucina Mai.
Woo! Yeah, Vib!
Yeah. Good job. And I'll turn it over to Lazy for the body acting, because that's very interesting.
So, yes, body acting is very key to the entire thing, since, of course, facial gestures, it's a lot hard. We're lacking a little bit in that kind of sort. And so, I apologize. What was the question again? I apologize.
It was a very general question, so I can give you a more specific one. I'm curious how you managed to pull off such stunts. I think a good scene to kind of dive into is the running scene. The way you were able to run so long. I'm sure there's people in the crowd who are really curious how you managed to do that, and then fall safely as well. Did you have a risk assessment laid out, or how did you manage to do that?
So that's funny. I actually just have a regular treadmill in my room, and I got on it and started running with it, and it was terrifying, to be honest, running and on a treadmill in VR. I cannot see where I'm going, so it's like a gamble for me. It was definitely a moment I had to get used to, because at first I had no idea what I was doing when it came to that. I was freaking out. Running on a treadmill without being able to see where you're actually at. It was a lot harder for me to judge where I'm at on that treadmill. So a lot of times, I went, it didn't go too well. But that's how we did that. It was definitely fun to do. And after doing that for a bit, it's a lot easier now. And I'm excited to use that for future things. But yeah, with just body acting in general, it's amazing thing to be able to do, especially for the characters. We need to make sure that's good. So usually what I do is I'll put myself in the shoes of that character at first. And so that gives me thinking of what I would feel in that situation, and then slowly start incorporating the personality of the character, like Lucina. Think about how she would act, and then be able to mix them together to be a character that feels real.
I didn't know you used a treadmill. That is fantastic. I'm sure there's so many people watching who are so amazed by that too. I can imagine. I feel like you do need a risk assessment for that. Maybe it would be helpful, because that sounds intense.
It probably would help a lot. Yes.
Also, I just want to.
Did you have a point you also wanted to make?
Yes. So with body acting, one of the things that we also focused on was actually looking at the character's expressions in the face. And actually, a big shout out to Waffles for creating this very easy system to help us lock emotions and actually be able to control them via triggers and everything like that. And actually, a big shout out to both Lazy and Ghostly, who did body acting for Kane in the film, for being able to convey those emotions for these really intense and dramatic shots. So props to both of them, and they made it a lot of fun to work with.
Applause.
Actually,
I'm curious.
I can. Oh, go on.
Yeah, jump on. No, you.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was worthwhile too, because I mentioned earlier how important voice acting and body acting are, and Lazy actually touched on the idea that we lack in the facial expression department. That is one of our biggest struggles, because some of the most nuanced expressions that you would be able to do in real life, like the slight watery eye expression of you being sad and trying to hide it, or the small facial movements and everything, we can't really do that in VR yet. And so we have to make up with expressions. And one of the, like Quinn mentioned, I guess I can show it. The coolest thing that I've been really happy with and using a lot of is my face is By the way, my face has been scared this entire interview, so I'm sorry for the expression that I forgot to change. But anyways, it's a radio menu, kind of. So what you can do is merge, I guess, between two different expressions. And though that might seem kind of not really that useful, it is useful when you're trying to convey the nuanced expressions. And so I'm looking kind of normal right now. But as I change the radio menu, which you can't see, my eyes start to move differently with it. And so I'm closing my eyes here and then changing to kind of this angry expression. And I'm hoping that that picks up on the camera because I think it's right there. But that's just an example of one of the things that we've really been utilizing a lot to try to match that expression.
Well, it's really effective, and a really effective way to achieve good facial expressions when facial tracking at the moment is still quite difficult to really get your hands on. I've seen some films with very clean facial tracking, but it's still something that I think most filmmakers and directors are still trying to get their hands on, and to allow that technology to be consumer. So this is such a great tool that you've developed in the meantime. Now I want to have time for audience questions, but I have one question to go to the script before we do. The film builds tension in such great ways. There's some amazing canted angles and slow tracks, especially in the beginning, when we're not really sure what is unnerving yet. But the way you build tension is also in the sound design too. I think the gunshots are very well placed, well timed, and also the coin flipping of Kane is also really well placed. I'm curious if those sound cues were written in the script from the beginning, or if that was something that you kind of played with in the edit.
Yeah. So I guess we can start with the coin flipping one, because that idea was started before we actually filmed, and it was found out because of actually, I believe, Quinn. He has an avatar that has a coin flip, and we thought, wow, why do all evil people in shows like flip like coins or something? And we were like,
it's classic. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got to replicate it here now, right? Because we have it in game, we might as well put it in the script. And so when we're scouting avatars, basically, that's when we figured out that was a cool thing to add to the story. And I believe with the other sound cues, I use sound in a lot of my films to really emphasize like unnervingness or tension, like you've said. And I did the same here. I'm trying to think of another instance of it that is specific, but I really like the train part
too.
Oh yeah, we can do that too. This actually ties in with the music. So that train part in the beginning, where it's just complete black, and then you start hearing like the rumbling of the train, and then the squealing of the wheels on the rails, and then the horn. I put that in because it felt a little unnerving, and I wanted the train to be a little bit of this sort of like, it feels like a little bit of like a monster or something, because it is her transport to this world, this very uneasy world that you've mentioned. How we have the train shot as it pans to the city and skyline, you see it, and it's really dystopian looking. It all plays the idea that you're basically changing your life direction, and it's a big deal, and it's really stressful. And with that soundtrack, that one, this is the weirdest part of this conversation, because that soundtrack I found on Position Music before we even started the script. And the weird thing about it is I remember exactly when I started listening to it, to the point where I was like, this has to be in the film. And it was driving down I-35W in Minneapolis, Minnesota, seeing the city skyline, and then having that play in my car. And it was just me on the way home from work, on the way to work. But that was when I realized that fits. And if you listen to the lyrics of the song as well, you'll see a lot of parallels to Lucina Mai, as she is, I guess, diving deep into something that she is fully unaware of.
Oh, I love that the music was such a central part of your inspiration, and that story of when that inspiration struck you as well is, I think, so relatable to a lot of creative people in film and other creative industries too. Now, actually, I have one more question before we do audience. I'm sorry. This film is part of a bigger world. It's part of a bigger story, and I would love for you to just quickly share how we can follow Penrose and make sure that we can see the next part of the series, and maybe you can give a slight teaser, if you will, too.
Oh, absolutely. So this film is, like I mentioned earlier, it's the first film of Studio Penrose, and you can find Studio Penrose on YouTube YouTube. The name is just Studio Penrose. And also on Twitter, it is Penrose Pictures on Twitter, because someone took Studio Penrose. But yeah, so in the studio, we plan to focus primarily on this sort of anime-esque serious film. And Emergence kind of ties into that. And we absolutely plan to make everything very stylized. And so the rest of our films that will forever be on that channel will be in this similar sort of color grading. They all take place in the city of New Millennia. They're going to be considered like serious film. And I know we actually talked about the word serious and serious film at some point, but what I really mean by serious film is a film where the characters take themselves as like real people. Not all films are going to be sad or like really gritty. Some of them are going to be happy, but they're all going to take place in the studio or in this city of New Millennia. And I guess the teaser I'll give is this is a pilot episode in a way. And when I say episode, I'm referring to our plans to make an episodic series. Basically, after Raindance, all of us are going straight to that storyboard, and we're going to start writing an episodic series that will take place in the city of New Millennia. And Lucina is one of the characters, but she's not the only main character. One thing that we touched on in the Penrose Protocol was the idea that there were two different factions, one representing lawful justice and the other representing vigilante justice. And in the end, things got a little, I can't spoil it, but got a little dark. And we want to show the idea that no two sides are fully in the wrong or in the right. And so we're going to continue that lore with the Penrose Intelligence Organization, as well as Cassandra, which was mentioned in Penrose Protocol. So expect a very dark and gritty series that follows multiple characters unable to see each other's viewpoints and lead to a very, very tragic conclusion. Hint, all of my films are tragedies in some capacity, and so that series will be pretty dark. So...
Okay, strap in for a tragedy, everyone, but a very cinematic one. Thank you for sharing that. Now, we have about 8 minutes or so. If anyone has any questions in the audience, we would love to hear from you. Yeah, Kip, come on down. If anyone has any questions, just come down and join us on the stage.
Sorry, my stick drift is making me move really slow today. Hello! I want to say kudos to that work. That was absolutely incredible. I did actually have a question regarding the use of the full body tracking and, you know, the body acting. With the treadmill, I know exactly how that goes because I do that as well. And I wanted to ask, do you utilize a pulley system to possibly, you know, have to negate the cord? Because I'm always doing the cord curtsy, especially when running on a treadmill. It'll sometimes catch around my leg or around my arm. Do you have anything in place that will keep it out of the way to make it a lot easier for you to enable you to run on the treadmill?
So it's yes and no, really. It's not. I don't have the pulley system. I do have like a little like kind of placement put on the treadmill itself to hold the cord completely out of the way. And so that's pretty much what I've used, because I did the same thing. I tripped over the cord many times when I was first trying it.
Yes. What I wanted to ask you with that as well, have you utilized anything to hold behind you? Because I use bands that, you know, you use for exercise, and I would put about 3 to 4 of them behind me. So then I use the clip to kind of like strap the cord in and put it like that. Is that something that you have done, or do you just kind of like just get on there and run and then that's it?
I do have like a get on there and run kind of system, but I do have like a little string at least attached to like a belt loop, just so like it kind of helps me measure where I'm at.
Yes.
So if I get too far away, like I'll know I need to speed up.
Exactly. Oh, that's perfect then. Well, that's beautiful. You did a great job again. Like that was phenomenal.
Thank you.
So keep it up. All right, that's my question. I'm gone.
Thanks, Kip. It's an incredible skill, I think, that is, and really unique too. It's great to hear. Ash, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi. Actually, I have 2. Do we have time, or should I just choose one?
Sure. No, you can do 2. That's all right. We have time.
First off, sorry, my controller drift is terrible. I'm trying my best not to fall. That was probably one of the most naturalistic feeling VR films I've ever seen. That was incredible. I especially loved the cinematography work and the voice acting work and these things. All of these. I love bodies. Sorry, I'm a little stage fright.
You got
First
answers.
question. First question. I know you said you used a treadmill. That makes a lot of sense, and that answered half of the question I had in my head. The other half is that body, just the way that Lucina ran in that scene felt so natural. I was wondering if there was something you did to, because in some other VR films, when a character has walked a large distance more than probably a play space provides, it's been a little less naturalistic looking than other stationary body movements. I was wondering if there was anything you did to maybe sync the player movement with your actual real movement. Because that was something especially that I noticed in that scene.
So we did use a few things. OVR settings has a little like smooth tracking system that you can get on a website called Booth, which is if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's like where you can get avatar stuff for VR chat. And that's what helps like smooth it out and everything. And then of course opening up the menu and opening up the social menu, it completely will negate all the stuttering and everything like that to help smooth it and keep it in sync. And that's what helped me be able to keep everything like not jittery or keeping it smooth, synced, everything like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was more. Sorry.
I can explain how the actual running went. So the reason of why that looked so weirdly realistic was because I actually had Lazy crank up the speed on his treadmill to actual jogging speed, and then placed him on a treadmill, on a dolly system. And so shout out to Metacosmic Studios for this one. And I keep losing track, but they have this dolly system where basically you can place points in the world, and basically this ball, which you can place yourself on or sit on for camera control, will move to the points that you set. And so I said,
right,
hey, let's place ball number 1 here and place ball number 1 all the way down there and sync up roughly how fast Lazy should be running while in the treadmill as well as running in the dolly system. But then I also had a second dolly system for myself because I had to control the camera and run alongside Lazy. And not only that, and this is the goofiest thing, so I'm so happy no one saw me do this in real life. But I actually had to pretend to run to give that mimicked camera movement, and that's how I got that shot of like running facing forward. So I was running along Lazy in real life.
Yeah.
Using all those together.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
A beautiful combination.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying,
No, that
you
makes a
using
lot of
that
sense.
and then his system.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Ash. I think we've got to wrap up there. But we'll have time after the show if you want to steal them for your second question.
Yeah, no problem.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. And thank you, Kip, for the question too. I'm afraid I've got to wrap up there, but if anyone wants to stay in the lobby and